First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Paul Otten, the superintendent of Beavercreek City Schools, and I want to thank all of you for coming out this evening. We called it a parent safety night, but it's really our student and staff safety night. Obviously, we want our parents safe as well, but really I think the topic that we want to discuss is our schools. First of all, I want to make it very clear that safety is our highest priority in our school district. We recognize all our building administrators, our board of education, and our staff. We recognize that if a student does not feel safe in school, they will not learn in the capacity that we know that we need them to. We need them to be a part of that learning process, and we need them to know that their environment is safe and secure. Tonight we have all of our elementary, secondary principals joining us this evening. The only one that was not able to join us was Sue Bamford from Parkwood. She has two events occurring in her building this evening, and she had asked which one she should attend, and it was better for her to be at her own building. So we will open it up this evening for questions. If there are building-specific questions, we will kind of direct those to our building administrators. If it's a district level, we will answer those as well up here. Our goal tonight is really to share the safety and security of our buildings, and I want to kind of clarify what that means. There's a lot of things that we want to inform our community about that when it comes to safety and security, but one of the things that we have to be cognizant of too is that our safety plans that we have written for all our buildings, that is not a public record, and that is not something that we will go into detail about tonight. And for a lot of reasons. One, obviously, is the integrity of the plan. We want to make sure that that plan stays confidential. And under the Ohio Public Records Law, that document is not a document that we would have to give out. And not that we would be asked to do that, but something that we know that if we keep that secure, that's good for our kids, that's good for our staff as well. One of the things when we talk about school security plans, we do not create those in isolation, as you can see from the individuals sitting behind me. They're not here to protect me. It'd be great to bring them around with me, but no, I want to introduce some of these individuals. First of all, I'd like to introduce, well, let me talk about who we collaborate first. We collaborate with the Beavercreek Police Department, the Beavercreek Township Fire Department, the Greene County Sheriff's Department, the Greene County Emergency Management Department, the Ohio Department of Education, and we also collaborate closely with Homeland Security. As I said earlier, none of these plans are created in isolation, and they're not done with just school administrators and school staff. They're done with some pretty important people. So first of all, I'd like to introduce some individuals here. First, our Chief of Police, Dennis Evers. Our Police Captain, Chad Lindsay, is here as well. Our Fire Chief, David Vandenboss. And then we have our two school resource officers, Mark Brown and Matt Hickey. And we are quite fortunate to have those two individuals working closely with our students every day. One thing I'd like to share with you is the plans that we discuss, and we'll share some of the training that we do with our students. Those plans are reviewed yearly, and we have to update those, and we have to submit those to Homeland Security and the Ohio Department of Education for approval. We have one individual that I have the pleasure of working with every day, and that is Bobby Fiore. Bobby is right here. She's the one that doesn't have the gun. And we are so fortunate to have Bobby in our office. Bobby is our Director of Pupil Personnel, and she has two children in our district. And so school security is paramount to Bobby. And everything that we do, Bobby is very proactive in our approach. And many of the things you're going to see tonight, everything that we do with our kids, every layer of protection that we put forward for our kids, Bobby has had a hand in that process, and we are a stronger district because of the work that she does day in and day out for our kids and for our staff. So with that, I'd like to introduce Bobby Fiore and let her kind of take it from here.
Thank you all for coming. To share a little bit about Beavercreek City Schools, we wanted just to share that we do ongoing drills, including rapid dismissals and school safety drills. These include lockdown, evacuation, our ALICE drills, fire and tornado drills, and they're conducted in conjunction with the fire and police departments. All levels of district personnel participate in these drills on some level. We do these at central office as well. We have drills where we respond to crises, pretend crises within the district, so we're prepared and everyone's prepared if there was ever a situation like that. We also have a Safe Schools Committee. This committee is comprised of building administrators, district administrators, counselors, and school nurses. And we meet on a regular basis, and we discuss what's going on in all the buildings in order to make sure that our current practices are what we want them to be, and to discuss ways that we can improve our current practices. And we also look at recommendations from the Ohio Center for P20, preschool through grade 20 safety and security, as well as anything we get from our building level crisis teams. Beavercreek City Schools does remain current with updates to recommended practices in school safety. The district updated all of our buildings to ensure there was a secure vestibule at the front entrance. A Marks radio has been placed in all schools, which is the direct line to the police department. And Beavercreek City Schools has 2 resource officers, as Mr. Otten introduced. And we also have security guards in our secondary buildings. Prevention and intervention efforts are continuous in Beavercreek. Positive behavior intervention supports, including character education programs, our Obeas bullying prevention program, and Yellow Ribbon suicide prevention program. Our PACS Good Behavior Game are implemented throughout the district. Designated teams at each building have been trained in the Traumatic Event Crisis Intervention Plan. It's what we call our TSED model. And we have 3 mental health counselors serving students across the district. There is also a Safe Schools hotline, and we'll have a link to that on the presentation from our school resource officers as well. Each school has a building and crisis and safety team that meets regularly to review current practices and recommend areas of improvement. We do tabletop activities, crisis activities, and they're facilitated at staff meetings. And this allows the staff to analyze how different crisis situations may impact the students and generate areas for improvement. We began the implementation of ALICE in 2014, and we continue to provide staff training and refresher trainings each year. Staff have received age-appropriate education and/or training based on their grade level, so we customize that to the age of the child. And Officer Hickey and Officer Brown are going to go into a lot more detail about ALICE in just a minute. We do work diligently to be prepared for crisis situations. However, we recognize safety procedures and products change constantly. We are extremely grateful for our relationships with local agencies, including the first responders. In addition, parents and community members provide valuable insight into potential situations and resources. We welcome feedback from all of our stakeholders. Now I would like to introduce Chief Evers with Beavercreek Police Department and Chief Van Voss, Beavercreek Fire Department, to share more information about the collaboration between Beavercreek City Schools and the police and fire departments.
Good evening, I'm Chief Dennis Evers, and thank you all for being here tonight. I think we all are in agreement. We all have one common objective, and that is the safety of our children. Our mission statement as a police department is to work in partnership with our community to safeguard life and property. And there's none of those partnerships more important than the one we have with our Beavercreek school system. A little bit of history on our school resource officer program. We started with SROs in Beavercreek schools in 2002. I know when we first started that program, we would routinely receive calls from parents wanting to know why there was a police cruiser sitting outside the high school. Well, 16 years later, we get calls, but there are calls wanting to know why we do not have a cruiser sitting out at the high school. So you can see how we've evolved as a society, and how that expectation has changed, and we do take seriously our commitment and responsibility to the schools. Some of the things that we have implemented, in addition to having officers in the schools, we have assigned officers in their districts to make sure that when they have available time, if they're completing reports, to do that in the school parking lot in their district. One of the major reasons for that is the increased visibility and the security and safety that provides to students, school staff, and you as parents. That visibility creates an atmosphere where if someone does intend or is thinking about doing something, they do not know the predictability of when we're going to be there and when we're not. The other thing that we do is we have our officers, when they're assigned in a district, the schools that are in their district, we ask them to stop routinely during the day as time permits, make a walk through the school, talk with the kids and staff. We track that activity statistically so we know how many of those we conduct in a year. I know the officers enjoy that. They like the opportunity to interact in the school, and I know the staff and the students appreciate that also. So again, those are a couple of things that we've done in addition to our SROs. We did assign a middle school SRO, which is Officer Matt Hickey. That started several years ago. Based on the need that we recognized at the middle school level. We have a void at the middle school level because we have a DARE officer who's in the schools, and we've participated in the DARE program since 1985. It's one of the longest running DARE programs across the country. Again, that middle school level was a void that we did not have an officer in, so several years ago we did, with the school's permission and their cooperation, assigned a middle school SRO. So Officer Brown is responsible for the high school complex, which includes Ferguson, and Officer Hickey handles the two middle schools, Ankeny and Coy Middle School, and he floats back between the two buildings. And again, our DARE officers at the elementary level, Monday through Friday, presenting DARE programs in our elementary schools. We do extensive training throughout the year to prepare for situations such as an active shooter in schools, and Officer Brown, Officer Hickey will go through some of that training with the presentation here shortly. The training we also do is with the fire department, because if we have to respond to a situation at the schools, it's going to be a joint response of police and fire, and the goal is to get them in as quickly as we can to address any injuries within the school facility. Again, these are things that we hope never happens, but we train routinely to address those. And I want to assure all of you sitting here, the Beavercreek Police Department will not respond to an active shooter and set up a perimeter. We are trained to enter the building and address the threat. When Columbine happened, that was the training that police were receiving at the time, was to set up a perimeter and wait. What we found was that training allowed for additional victims because they did not enter and address the threat. The training then evolved to what was called quad training. Quad training was when you had at least 3 officers, but usually 4, would form a team and enter the school and address the threat. The training today is single officer response to active threat or active shooter, meaning a single Beavercreek police officer would respond to any school where there's an active threat, would not wait for backup. They would enter the school, go directly to the threat, and neutralize it. That's our training. That's what you can expect in this community. So we will not be responding and setting up a perimeter. I know there's been a lot of discussion regarding the Parkland shooting in Florida about maintaining a perimeter. That is not the training that is given, and that's not the training that we will be giving to our officers. They are trained to address the threat. I'm going to let Chief Boss address from the fire side regarding response and training, and then I will introduce Officer Hickey and Officer Brown.
Thank you very much. Appreciate seeing you all out here tonight. It's good to see an interest in this topic, especially as relevant as it is on the headlines today. I'm a double stakeholder, so not only am I your fire chief, but I'm a parent of 2 children in the school system as well. So I have a vested interest for many years to come in how we do this. I want to take a step back from what Chief Evers was just describing as far as the active shooter training and let you know a few of our programs as well. For years, matter of fact, most of you going through school probably did fire drills and tornado drills, and that's the primary first point of contact we have with the school system. We work with them and making sure those drills are being done correctly, timely, and answer any questions from a professional perspective that come up. So we're in the schools for that and for regular fire safety inspections through our Fire Prevention Bureau. And so we have a regular presence there. In addition, we have a public safety outreach where we do some education, usually around Fire Prevention Week. We're in the schools doing a number of classroom appearances, working with students and teachers. We support a firefighter field program, which is an independent or a partnership program that brings fire safety educators in along with teachers in some of their fire safety modules. So we're working with them in the public fire prevention and education side of things. In addition to that, we are implementing with the school system a new program where we're going to be working with the schools to administer CPR and stop the bleed training. This training will be offered both to staff and now that there's been a new state law implemented to high school students as well. So every high school student, once we get this program up and running, will receive CPR training and stop the bleed, which is an emergency tourniquet training for kind of a traumatic injury situation in their high school education, and we'll be a part of that. We also have outside of school hours, if students are interested in public safety, especially in the fire or the emergency medical services side of things, career options, we work with them. We have an Explorer post, and that's through the Boy Scouts of America. It's open to boys and girls, basically ages 14 to 21. They can come out and learn more about the fire service and the EMS service as a career, and we work with them, and we have a number of Beavercreek students involved in that. But probably, again, to most everybody's attention, especially with the Parkland shooting, wanted to describe a little bit about what you can expect from us as far as an emergency response. The Beavercreek Fire Department, and we provide EMS, emergency medical services, or ambulance services as well. We respond jointly with the police department on any sort of threat like that. And our crews are similarly trained where we do not wait outside for the police officers to bring victims out to us. We actually have body armor and ballistic protection for our firefighters, and they'll don that, and they will go in with an armed security escort, and they'll provide care inside the building and then work with the police department to remove any victims that need to come out, and then we transport them. So that's a new thing to EMS as well. So you heard from Chief Evers how things have evolved since the Columbine shooting. It's evolved for EMS and fire as well as for law enforcement. One of the things I'm very proud of us accomplishing over the past several years is a joint training to that effect. And I'm sure you'll hear a little bit about that tonight, but I want you guys to know that we train every year with the police department in your school buildings. We have full-scale exercises where we work together to practice these things so that we have an opportunity to not only hone our skills, but to review what's working, what's not working, and make adjustments so that if we ever do have to use them, we know that we can provide the best service possible. So that's it in a nutshell for the fire department and what we can offer, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Chief. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Officer Mark Brown, who's the high school SRO, and Officer Matt Hickey. I want to compliment both of these individuals. The partnership we have with the schools is a successful partnership, in large part due to these two gentlemen, what they coordinate for us on behalf of the police department, and also what they coordinate on behalf of the schools. Again, they're the ones that are in the schools full-time. They're with your kids. They're there every day, providing that support and security within the school buildings themselves. And they are our trained ALICE instructors. And again, that's training that has evolved here in the last few years. They have taught it to the staff at the schools, the administrators, and also the students. So tonight they'd like to take a few minutes to run through this with you as parents so that you know what everyone has been instructed on. So I will turn this over to Officer Hickey and Officer Brown.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, I'll start. I'm Officer Brown. I'm the one stationed here at the high school. I appreciate all of you that have students here for giving me the opportunity to work with them. I am passionate about this job. I'm a former grad of Beavercreek myself, so born and raised in this community. I actually went to school here, so it's kind of neat to actually be back and do something proactive in the school. Like Ms. Fiore said, we started this program. It's called ALICE, and we'll go through what that acronym is here in a minute and explain kind of the concepts behind it. But I've been here 5 years now. We started it my first year here in 2014. So that's kind of what we've been developing and enhancing. You've probably heard it called Run, Hide, Fight. The Department of Homeland Security calls that. There's various different acronyms: get out, take out, hide out. All of them preach the same thing. It's about being situationally aware. We can't rely on the time anymore where basically the cheapest lock that government bid buys is going to potentially save your kid's life. This is a life skill that we think we're teaching to help them recognize threats and empower them and the staff to make good decisions and act on the information at hand and to do something proactive to either get themselves out, strengthen a room, barricade it more, or take countermeasures if it comes to that. So with that, I'll let Matt give it a thing, and then we're going to go through a little PowerPoint that we show and address with your students here at the schools.
Again, my name is Officer Matt Hickey. I've been the SRO for the middle schools now going on 3 years. I love it. Actually, what got me interested into the SRO program was having to stop by the schools during the patrol day and get in and talk to the kids. And the second year after I was doing it, the kids remembered me from the first year, would come up and talk to me. And it was really rewarding and nice that they know who you are. And now that I'm in there, we're on a first name basis with a lot of the students. I've got children here in the district as well. And school safety is something that's really hits home to me to make sure that we do everything we can to protect our children. This ALICE presentation that we're going to go over is something that Mark and I have done numerous times with other businesses in the community, as well as with everybody here in the school district. This presentation here is the one that we show the students. And we ask them questions during it, and so that way they can kind of get an idea of what to do. And, like Mark said, this is a life skill that we're teaching them. Not only could they possibly have to use it at school, they could use it out at the mall, movie theater, wherever the case is. And we always tell them, we're not trying to make them paranoid, we're trying to make them prepared. So with this, the goals of our drills is for all the students to know what the meaning of ALICE is, what to start to thinking about, the events, where they're at during the day, what they could do, and understand what their responsibilities are and what the teachers are going to do, or the administrators, to let them know how to act during the situation.
So with ALICE, what it means is, you can see that have a name there. Funny story with this, just to let you know. This was actually invented by a police officer after Columbine. His wife was a teacher at the time, and they initially called it LICE. And they were like, well, good luck introducing that into a school system. So they added the A to it, and each of these things kind of have a different thing, and we're going to go through those each individually. This is kind of a scaled down thing. We do go into more detailed training when we do drills with the kids, but this is just the generic thing that we start, the building block that we, build from. So it stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. And what that means is this isn't a linear progressive response, meaning you don't have to use all of those things. If we hear a threat on the other side of the building and we're here, why would we wait when there's a door right here? We can get out, we evacuate, we're done. We've done what we can. But we potentially, might have to go through some of those other ones. So you don't have to go through all of them.
So we have different terminology that we're using in the schools. Lockdown would be in case there's an outside threat, medical emergency, something of that nature. They would basically just lock the doors, turn out the lights if need be, or it may be something as simple as just locking out the doors, and they may continue teaching class, but nobody could go into the hallway. If we would have a medical emergency, then we would be able to get into what we have to, and then get the victim out and go from there. The next one would be Allison Schroeder. That would be something that if we would have a life-threatening emergency inside the building, as somebody should be there, a possibility of a weapon or an active shooter event, this is where they now know what to do. They would go into the true Alice protocol.
So with the alert, this is what we try to preach kids. A lot, this is two parts really. The alert is, a lot of people think, okay, it's how I'm going to get the announcement. We try to make it clear to people that, we have to get out of the mindset that it might not always come through the front door. We always think that everything's going to have a clear-cut, visual definition to it. But, this isn't a one-size-fits-all playbook. There is really no flip chart for, these situations are fluid, dynamic, they change consistently and constantly, so you have to be ready to adapt to that too. You can't just say, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and it's over. You still have to evolve with the event. But the alert is, how do you recognize, the threat? What is that? What should a student do if they're in a classroom if that event occurs? We talk to them about things. How would you notify it? I mean, you as the student don't have access to the PA system to get on and announce it, or to potentially send an email. Or, we rely on technology so much, but it's basically like if any of you send your kids through stranger danger, we talk about that. You always have your voice. You have some kind of stimulus that you can get out and alert people and draw attention to the situation. Just like we tell them, you're not my mom or dad, I'm not going with you. It's the same thing. Why do you have a weapon in here? Whatever it may be. We try to get them to be aware of how you can bring attention to the situation and get that information out.
The lockdown, that's the most important one that we spend a lot of time on. We want them to look at the classrooms, figure out what they have that's available to them, and to go ahead and to fortify the room as much as possible. And we put these pictures in here just to show them this is something that what it should look like. We noticed from doing the drills before that we really weren't worried about breaking it, or we didn't want to break anything, so they would only move a few desks in front of it. And kids were still coming up, well, is this enough? And we wanted to let them know, no, that's not. Any piece of furniture that's not nailed down should go in front of the door. And one thing that I noticed when they had the incident in Florida, some of the kids were posting stuff on the social media. And we see that they only had a few desks in front of the doors, and that was it. There was still an entire classroom full of furniture. We want all of that in front of the doors. We tell the kids, don't worry about breaking anything, because I promise you, if you don't break it, we will when we get there on scene. And they all look like, oh, hey, we can do something. So when we go through it, now we're allowing them to put a little bit more furniture in front of the doors, because they're only going to do what they practice or continue to do so. So just like with the fire drill, if they would only go halfway out, they would stop if there was a true fire. So we are allowing them to go further and further on with our training.
And with lockdown, with what Matt's saying, this is something, lockdown still is a great starting point where we just, talk about making your room a harder target. How can we take objects that are in here and barricade the doors, whatever it may be, belts, shoelaces, different things. We show them different techniques on how to, tie off the pneumatic hinges on certain doors that have that, or if it's a regular door, how you can secure the doorknob and make it, harder to get into. So we cover different things like that and go through a lot of demonstrations with that. The information, basically, this is the next function of it, and this is, continuing to get that real-time information out. Matt brought up the Parkland, Florida thing, and we saw some things. There were actually kids, taking video and filming while the shooting was going on. And although that's could be great evidence after the fact, it's probably not the smartest thing. We would rather them, use that information, call 911 and provide real-time information that could be helpful, and not worrying about capturing something on video. But we, want them to, get as much viable information as they can, get it out to us, get it out to anyone else. We preach knowing the building. You don't have to know the exact blueprint of the building, but, north, south, east, and west. You should know the generic layout of your building and, a landmark or something. All the buildings in the district are labeled the same. They start with door 1. If it's for the high school here, faces north, so if you saw when you came in, that's 1 north. You see that 1 in right on it. And they go clockwise around based on that. So, we try to get the kids to recognize that, because that's, a way they can remember what exits they need to get out, where they're at, if they need to call something out. So we really, preach the information part.
Now, the counter portion here, this is where we stop at the middle school level. We do high school, middle school with the counter. We haven't taken it into the elementary schools because we're still deciding on what age appropriate grade we should start doing this at. And we're not trying to teach them to be MMA fighters. We're not encouraging them to form posses and try to find a gun. But this is a last-ditch effort of what to do should the barricade fail in the room and they have to counter the intruder that they come in. The other thing that we always we want them to know is to spread out. We don't want them huddled into the corner anymore, to formulate a plan. If they have windows, hopefully we got somebody as they're barricading, they're trying to get other kids out the window, but they need to know that yes, they can fight back, they can do something. Some teachers, we tell them they got books. If somebody comes through, throw books at them. If it's iPads, whatever the case may be, throw it at whoever comes through the door, and we practice these with the kids through our house drills. We'll pick a couple of classrooms, and we'll have somebody dress up in a padded suit and come in to simulate the intruder. We have pool noodles and foam balls that they'll throw at the person and end up taking them to the ground. And it just gives them a sense that this does work. And so we have them ask the question, what can you use in your room if you have to counter the intruder? And they come up with a lot of great ideas. And the kids are very intelligent. They think about this stuff, and we've learned a lot from them because they'll say, hey, we could use this or we could use that. And so once the information we gather, we'll pass it on to other people as we're doing the training. And it never amazes me every time we do this, somebody else gives us another idea that we can use. And so we just show them, book bags if they have to, books, whatever the case is, fire extinguishers. We have to throw anything that they can. And then we explain to them, if they happen to knock the weapon out of their hand, what to do with it. We tell them never to pick it up. If there's a trash can in the room, put a trash can over top of it. Kick it away, do whatever the case is, because we explain to them how dangerous it is. What we're trained to do to come in, we don't know who the person is. We're trained to come in and look for the person with the gun. So they now know, what to do. And we say if anybody just tells them to leave with the gun, put it in a trash can, hold it out in front of them, because that doesn't look as threatening as somebody running down holding the gun. And that is one of the big questions that all the kids ask is, what do you want us to do with it? And we cover here for them several times, and we get a lot of good questions for that as well.
And then lastly is the evacuation part. Where should students go if they're able to get out of the building? The answer always is, and we do, like Mr. Otten said, we can't go into a lot of specifics, but I assure you that we have, various reunification points throughout the, district, different rally points. But in a true crisis like this, and you get out, we tell the kids, if you can still see the building, you're too close. Just keep going. We will find you later. Your possessions, property, you don't come back for that stuff. You don't want to go from a moving target to a stationary target and try and get in your car. You just go. You got the Lamb Lab over here, neighborhoods across the street behind us. Lose yourself in there. Just get away from the threat. That is the main thing. That is the safest option that we would prefer. If people can get out, that's the best course of action for that.
Another question that's always brought up to us is, what if I live a couple streets over? Can I run home? Absolutely. We tell them take your class with you. Keep everybody at the house, and we'll come and get you at it when we know that things are safe. And at first, everybody was like, "Ooh, should we tell them to do that?" And I remember the look that I got when we had our safe schools meeting. I said, "I'd rather lose the kids in the neighborhood and the fields." I said, because in a matter of some time, we'll have enough officers. We'll tell them, "Hey, go find kids." And so that's something that they now know that they can leave. The teachers will tell them where to go, but we have the kids also. They now know to tell the staff, "Hey, I live here. We can go there," and that's fine. We want them to understand that. Also, another thing that we have is in every one of the classrooms, the district bought what they call go bags. And inside there is medical equipment. We have tourniquets, we have pressure bandages, gauze, and several other things that should somebody sustain a life-threatening injury in a classroom, we have the ability to at least slow that down and help them out. And it was we got those in there, 3 years ago? Yeah, 3 years ago we got them installed. So any classroom that you go into, you'll see the black and orange bag hanging by the door. That's what those are.
And then lastly, here's the site, I think, for the Safe Schools thing, or maybe it's on the next one, but
Just wait, Bob.
we have been preaching and, if you see something, say something. I will say, people are a little more hyper-vigilant now after the Parkland thing, and that's great. It was on the news, and it's not like we're sharing anything we're not, but here at the high school, since that happened, there have been 5 students that unfortunately, learned a hard lesson about making threats and, thinking it's funny to post things about doing damage to, the school and our students here. And we're not going to tolerate it. We have 0 tolerance for that. So, 5 threats were shut down. A lot of students came forward, brought forward social media posts, shared it with us, and we acted on it. So, we do preach that, and the kids are, they bring it forward to us. So, I want to thank them for that.
And this is the anonymous tip line down here that the school has set up, that if anybody wants to report anything, they can go to the web address and type it in, and it'll get forwarded to us, and we can look into it. You don't have to give any information if you don't want to.
So that is a quick overview. I mean, we did kind of, scan through it for your guys' thing. I mean, we can answer some more in-depth questions if you want, because I think, to your understanding, Mr. Otten, that we're doing a Q&A now, or is there anything else you guys want to cover before we?
I'll just say one thing.
There you
One thing I'd like to just state, I just want to reiterate, having these 2 individuals is outstanding. Our kids respond so well, and to have these 2 gentlemen walking our halls every day, they are so in tune with what is going on in our buildings. And one of the things, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was hired in the district about almost 2 years ago, I was invited. I think Mark was the one that invited me in the summertime, so I really hadn't met many people, and Mark had said, hey, we're going to do this training exercise at one of our schools, and it was Ankeny at the time. And I thought, I was living in Fairfield, and I thought, oh man, I'm going to have to stay in the evening to go see this thing, but I better go see it. I will tell you, it was the most incredible thing I've ever experienced to watch our police department, our sheriff's department, and our fire department converge on one building for a number of days, not just an evening, but a number of days where they ran exercise after exercise after exercise in that building with guns, with pellets, with people. I mean, I had my safety gear on, and it was exhilarating. Not a good exhilarating, it was a sick exhilarating. It was a sick exhilarating because it was in a school that I am now in charge of. But I've never experienced something with a group of adults who are so dedicated to protecting our schools and what these gentlemen and the entire police force and fire department have done. This year, they invited me again, which there was no way I was going to miss out on that opportunity. And we went and had that at Ferguson Hall this past year, and I know this upcoming year it'll be at Coy. So this is something that they do, and again, it is multiple days of training. And what's incredible is they come out and they debrief after every one of them. Every one of them, what went well, what didn't go well. They're coaching, the officers through. We need to attack this room differently. I've never seen anything like that. One last thing I do want to say is our Board of Education. They are the number one. They want us obviously to provide incredible education for our kids here. But I will tell you, all 5 of our board members, this is their number 1 priority. Their number 1 priority is, let's do whatever we have to do to make sure that our kids are prepared for the unthinkable. And we all hope that day never comes. But I will tell you, with the individuals that we have here presenting, we are light years ahead of a lot of school districts. So I just want to thank them publicly for all that they do. So, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Anyone want to start with a question?
Oh,
Go ahead. Well, I got her back here first. She beat you to it. Go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about how any of this changes for our elementary level kiddos? A lot of this sounded geared towards middle and high school kids.
The question was, and since since we're live streaming it, I'm going to repeat her thing. How does this change a little for the elementary? Because this did seem to be more geared towards the older. I'll just start quickly, and maybe some other people can jump in. Matt hit on it briefly. You know, we do try to focus because it is harder at that level, obviously. You know, you're going to have a teacher that's a lot more responsible. They're not going to have, you know, the help potentially that they might have with the older kids at the older level. So we do focus on evacuations and barricading the rooms. The drills kind of focus on, you know, we leave it up to the teachers a lot, you know, get creative, you know, make it a game. How do we build a fort in the room? You know, you try to gear it towards their age group and stuff. There are different textbooks that we bought through the Alice Institute that help kind of tell stories and kind of, you know, discuss this, you know, if a threat comes in. So, you know, in a nutshell, that's about all I can say on that. Does anyone else, do you have anything to add on that, Matt?
No, the only thing, like I said, we don't do is the counter in the elementary schools at this time. And we go into the classrooms that the teachers ask us, and we kind of give them tips on how to pre-stage their classroom, because we understand a teacher that's got a classroom full of first graders isn't going to get the help that a middle school or high school teacher would get. So any help that we can give them on how to set their classroom up, because instead of having your bookcase on the other end of the classroom, have it closer to the door. So if any case, tip it over, at least you have some sort of a barricade there. And you know, we've started this for a few years now. I'm seeing the classroom setting up a lot better. And at this point, we're still discussing when we want to introduce the counter to the elementary schools. At the age, we really don't know yet.
And the chief wanted me also, we do preach that there are more designated, like, I guess, rally point or reunification points that we set for the kids. So they kind of know where they need to go with, you know, their teachers. And it's part of that making it a game. I hate to, you know, say it's not really a game, but, you know, who wants to be the fastest ninja to the tree at the playground? Whatever it may be. I mean, that's the kind of concept they use. And I don't know, any of the elementary principals, would you like to elaborate any more or say anything what you've seen with it, or you?
I'll just say, when we do have an Alice drill, we do use the terminology. We say there's an intruder in the building, and it's coming down by the first grade classroom. So the kids are used to hearing us talk about, when we have a drill, we don't sugarcoat it, we say what we see. And so they've heard it, and it's scary, even a drill, even being the person saying it over loudspeaker is scary. But we tell them exactly what's happening. So we tell them where the person is, so the other part of the building can leave. So we try to be as open and honest as we can at that point.
Good question. Let me jump back to him because he was in that. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you guys, everybody here, for what you do. We really appreciate it here, and all of us being invested in the school system. And just a little history on me. I moved here from South Carolina. It's just me and my daughter here. And I was very impressed with the state of Ohio and their school systems. For the simple fact is, in South Carolina, a lot of people talk about how bad their school is. Up here, almost everyone thinks that their school is the best. And that is impressive. That really is impressive. I got bullied a lot in South Carolina. That really doesn't happen. So I appreciate the work that you do. One of the concerns that I had was, I talked to Mr. Auditorium over email regarding the walkout that's coming up soon, was while I may not agree with it, that's neither here nor there, the security for the school, this is not a forced walkout from my understanding, so I'm assuming that there will be more police presence outside the school as well as still your police presence inside the school, am I correct?
Yes, we've taken that into account. We actually just had a meeting prior to this about that. We will have extra officers up here since this is a designated walkout. Do you want to say anything, Jim, about that?
Yeah, one of the things, when we look at that event, you know, the school district is not endorsing the event, but we know that students obviously have a right, as long as it's done peacefully. And so one of the things that we've looked at is we said, you know, we're going to provide options. There's plenty, I have 3 kids in the district, and we've had a lot of discussion in our household just about this event as well. And the options that we're looking at for here at the high school, and then probably Mr. Karras and Ms. Sweet could talk about this better than I can, but there's going to, if a student wants to participate in the walkout, there will be an area. For us, it's important to make sure we provide security for that event. So we are going to have security for that. We also have students that we know are going to stay in the classroom, that want to continue to stay in that classroom and learn. I know that there's been a lot of dialogue with a lot of students here at high school, and a lot of them have voiced, hey, I want to stay in here, that's what we want to do. There's also, many of our students have worked with our administration because they want a program not that is geared towards the walkout, but a program to honor those students and staff that lost their life. So there will be a small program that will be offered for students who are interested in doing that. Am I correct about that, Mr. Parrish?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
But one of the things one of the questions that was brought up to me was, okay, well, if students are walking out, that's happening at a certain time. Everybody knows that. And we've talked for like the last couple of weeks about how do we provide additional security there to do that. So we've worked with Mark and Matt about that, to be able to provide that presence there for our students as well. One thing that I had to be reminded of, because that was a concern to me, we dismiss every day at the same time too. And so our students, about 1,800, and if you count our at Ferguson, they are all dismissing at the exact same time every day. So although we recognize there's a moment that this has been determined as a 10 o'clock moment, we do that every day as well too when we dismiss our students each day too. So we want to be cognizant of that, but security again is our top priority to make sure we do that.
Okay, I don't mean to be rude. My daughter's Koya, I gotta go get her from class.
Thanks for coming, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I took the ALICE training for granted until I heard that I think Parkland didn't have that. And so I'm curious to find out, did you bring ALICE training in? Is that mandated by the state? Is that something that you did on your own? I mean, I thank you for doing that. And I've just been surprised to hear that some schools across the country don't have this training. So I think we're very fortunate to have that. I'm curious to see how you brought that in.
I might defer to Bobby. I know when I started in 2014 here at the high school, I mean, that was the direction when I first talked with her that we were going to go. I don't know how the school district landed on it, but that's the program. It was pretty much the predominant one out there and the one we feel is best for, our school.
And that's exactly where we decided to go with Alice, it is recommended by many across the state. I know a lot of the different police organizations recommend this, so it's just something the district looked into, and then I think when Mark came, he was all on board, so it just meshed together. So then we started with administrators, then we went to staff, and then we trickled it down to students. I think everyone, with very few exceptions due to absences, are trained in the district. So even our subs receive some training.
So it's not mandated by the state?
No.
It's an
Not
opt-in?
this time.
Wow.
It is not. It is endorsed, like she said, by the Ohio Attorney General's Safe Schools Task Force, which is who we submit all our school plans to, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the Ohio Department of Education, I know. There might be one other. So it's the endorsed program to be doing something, but yeah, it's still not mandated, but we decided to be proactive to do it.
You're required to do drills and safety drills, but they don't tell you the exact way that you have to do those.
Thanks for bringing that.
Go ahead, ma'am, and then we'll move back.
For the Parent Safety Night, we're new to Ohio, and so the question goes a little bit further, getting clarification on the elementary level. I know you mentioned the language, which I think is really good to be straightforward, but will it be active shooter, intruder with a gun, or are we not supposed to know because it's kept within the school?
I don't know that that's a secret. I think we would try to be honest, but we, in the past, have always just said intruder.
Thank you. And then the second part to that is, do you have an opt-out policy? And the reason with that, we were surprised to hear that the counter is not used with elementary, because we had our 9-year-old came home very scared and using, I don't want to get shot. It was shared, do you want to stand or fight? I don't know if I can do it, Mom. So You know, I'm so thankful that you're giving us the information, and we talked to him, and some of those things are paper, but we're giving him the option of, do you want to do this or not, for the sake of not adding anxiety. So I'm not sure if there's an opt-out policy.
For me and Matt, I know the district does message us out prior to us doing the drills, so hopefully you guys have got those or seen those. We do try to make all our drills, we take into account different students' levels of, potential anxiety or, physical situations that might cause different problems. So we try to take all into account, but I'm sure the school district would be open to that if you responded.
Do you mean opt out of a counterpart of it?
Not
Or
opt-out of participating in the drill. I mean,
Okay.
because he came home and was like, well, I need to know how to zigzag because I'm going to avoid being shot. You know, so there was a lot of language that I was surprised that what I'm hearing was not supposedly introduced.
I think it would be important for you to talk with your building principal about that specifically, just to hear what we have to say, but I do want to reassure you that when we do the elementary drills, we focus on educating students. So it's more of, the main thing is they need to listen to their teacher. That is the number one thing. They need to do what their teacher says, because in an evacuation, they model how they evacuate. So they show them how to do that, what language they use, how they walk, where they go, what they do. Then in the barricade, same thing. They show them how to barricade, what they can use, and those types of things. If there's other language or things that you're uncomfortable with, I strongly recommend you finding the building principal and talking to them so we can make sure that we know what it is that's being said. Okay?
One thing I would add, it's sad that we live in a society that as we talked earlier, you have, if a police car 15, 16 years ago was parked out in front of the high school, they were getting phone calls. Now we're getting phone calls that we don't have enough police cars parked out in front of our schools. I think one of the things that we've had discussions on is how do we prepare our kids for the unthinkable, and where is that line? And that line for one individual could be this, and for another person it could be here. And that is the fine line that it's like dancing on the razor's edge for us, because we've had conversation with other school districts, and there's one here in Greene County that when they do an active shooter drill, they literally have their police department with starter pistols in the school firing the starter pistol off. And when you think about that experience, there's a part of you that says we need to be doing that with our kids, because we need to get that as real as possible. Although they know it's a drill, we need them to know it's as real as possible, so if, God forbid, the event really does take place, we haven't softened it so much that they really don't know how to react when they hear that sound. But then on the other side, we also know we're going to have students who will not, even though we've told them it's a drill, even though we've said Officer Brown has this starter pistol and he's going to walk, just that experience can create a lot of trauma for a student. So it is a really fine line that our district has to follow, and you want to, our number one priority is to make sure our kids, if an event would take place, they know how to react. At least they have some skills in their, or tools in their toolbox that they can do what they need to do. And if we don't go as far as we think we should, then we haven't prepared them for that. So it really is a fine line, and when you're dealing with 8,000 students, that changes pretty dramatically with how we respond to that. So,
How about in the back there?
Just a couple things. I've got an elementary age daughter, and unfortunately these shooters keep getting more intelligent. So my question is are we doing anything with the bus drivers? Are we doing anything with that? And are we doing anything when the kids are outside, like at recess? Do we have like speakers on the outside of the schools that if something's happening on the inside, that they know
And I agree, and that was addressed the year we had so many of the bomb threats up here. We were consistently going to the same place, so we made sure that that's been changed. So that's a game time call, each situation that comes in. You know, our staff knows certain areas. I mean, we will designate, you know, the time where we tell them to get kids to if it is an evacuation like that, where we do have to do something. So that part has been addressed, I know.
And we did do the Alice training with the bus drivers a couple years ago as well. Was it 2 years ago? I think 2 years ago we did Alice training with the bus drivers. And as of the answer to the question about recess, we haven't done that yet because still in the elementary schools, it's new to them, and we're still trying to figure out what's the best way to do it. We don't want to let everybody know where all the different reunification points are at, or rally points, because we don't want somebody to plan something over there as well. But all the staff members do know where to tell the kids to run to in case of an event, and we're still working out the details on doing something in the elementary schools at recess or during lunchtime. Because logistically, that's where it's going to be an issue.
And one of the things I just want to comment on, when you talk about communication, what we ended up doing last year, we started tabletop exercises. Mark and Matt, basically what we asked them to do is we asked them to create a situation. None of us in the district office know what that situation is. We received a phone call. Obviously, I know the phone call's coming because I'm working with them. We received a phone call, and what we wanted to make sure was we had 3 new district office administrators that came on board last year. And one of my greatest concern at the start of the school year is, well, I knew what I did in my old school district. He knew what he did in his old school district, and he knew what he did in his old school district, but none of us knew what we needed to do together as a team. So one of the first things we decided to do is we talked with Mark and Matt and said, we need you to create a scenario, and we need to have discussion on how are we going to respond as a team. Because at the time when an event's occurring in any of our buildings, our building administrator is the point person in that building. They are the person that is on site as an event occurs, and they are addressing that situation. We all have very specific roles that we flip into and go into that mode to do that. One of those, 3 of us go to the site, and the rest of our district office team really convenes kind of into a room, and all communication comes out of that room. We know that there is a part during this plan, once we have started securing the situation, that we have to start communicating out to our families, and we will give you all the information that we can as soon as we can do that. And when we do these scenarios, we literally are writing communications to parents. We're writing text messages that are going out, rapid notifications that are going out. We're writing letters. And obviously the purpose behind that is so that when we're all done, we all sit down as a team with the police department and we go through everything. What went well, what didn't go well. And that really was kind of a brainchild of watching what they were doing in our schools. So they know how to function as a team, but we know when an event like this happens, our building administrators, our staff, and our district team really has to work together as a team. So we see communication as essential to our families, because if we know we're communicating to you, you will know what is happening with your child at that time. So those are drills, though. We want to make sure we don't send any of that stuff out, obviously, when we're doing the drill. But we will always make sure we communicate out to you so you are very aware of what's happening with the situation.
Can I answer part of the question?
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Walk.
You had asked if we were at recess, how would anyone outside know what's going on? At all the elementaries, anytime someone's at recess, we do have radios, so we're in contact outside. We know, the secretary can reach us, different people in the building can reach us. That's probably how the news would get out if there was someone inside. Everyone outside has whistles, and we would take off. So that would be one way to get the kids' attention and go where we need to go, but we do have the radios. So certainly not a perfect system, but at least there is some form of communication out there.
And to add on to that a little bit too, I forgot, me and Matt try to go through to every building at least once a year and do what's called kind of a threat assessment, just analyze that building, determine what maybe, can go on. We test the phones in the buildings to make sure that, they can radio to us. The Marks radio system that was mentioned earlier, that is a direct radio system linked to the police department. We test that. We look at the options, like you said, if an intercom isn't working, maybe something's going on in gym or the choir's in here and it's loud. There are some visual alerts that you can have that, send out a signal that you hit a button to alert. So we do look at all that stuff, and, we're, evolving with things, and, when new products come out, we do look at them.
The big thing with Florida though was that they talked about him being suspended, but not at that school anymore. Is there anything that the schools communicate, because there are, 8, 9 of them, communicate with each other, this student is expelled or this student is suspended? Is there a picture that each of the schools have?
We do not currently do that. When a student when a student is expelled, they are obviously not permitted to attend any school function or be on property. That does not prevent them from, just because the letter says that does not prevent them from coming onto the property. But we see expulsions. We do see expulsions at all schools, elementary, middle school, and high school, but we've never communicated among that. And I mean, it's not like we have a lot of expulsions that we handle, but it's a very good point that you ask.
What over here, then?
You talked about announcements being made or whatever, where the intruder was and this sort of thing. What if there's not somebody available in the office or wherever to be making the announcement? Or what if you don't know where the intruder is? My high schoolers think they're supposed to be waiting on an announcement.
Well, we do, getting back to our presentation, we try to tell kids and staff, you have to use your senses. Sight, smell, sounds. Stop, look, and listen before you go out in any situation. Would you agree with that, Matt? As far as that, we try to pre-check, talk about that. There are other methods that some of our schools use, to get something out if they encounter the threat.
I don't think we got that for long.
A lot of our schools will use a whistle. Teachers carry a whistle system. So getting back to what I said, it's not always going to be like you're saying. You're not going to have a play-by-play announcer basically telling you where it's at. You might have to, make some of these decisions on your own. So we have a whistle system that they can use to, kind of set off a chain reaction to indicate that there's a problem going on. So we have considered those. We're still developing things and learning new things, but, we have planned for those contingencies as best we can.
And to go one step further with that, the next Dallas drill that we're planning in the middle schools is we're not giving them the play-by-play, because I've had detailed conversations with my administrators, and we said this could be unrealistic. We don't want to set people up to thinking, oh, they're going to tell me where this person is every time. So our next ones that we're going to have, we're going to give general information and see how people react from there, because as we did with one of the other house drills, didn't go the way we planned, which was good, because we were able to sit back and realize, okay, we need to work here in these different areas. And so we're going to continue to go one step further and try to, like Mr. Otten said, make it as real as possible. And these next ones, we're not going to give them the play-by-play.
I appreciate that, because they, like I said, they're older kids and they both are like, I really don't know. Where I work, had a lockdown, and we learned so much about, what we were not doing that we needed to and whatever, just through doing that. But I think it's the unknown is exactly what it is. So I appreciate knowing that they are going to face that sort of a scenario soon too.
Mr. Rice.
So how do you want parents to respond when we're receiving text from our kids and something is happening and but we haven't necessarily received something from the school?
Please don't come to the school. It's tough to say, but yes.
That's what I want.
Absolutely, yes. Should be something that We would have to do an evacuation outside unless Mr. Ross would go a little further, but we will let the parents know, and we work quite well at it to let you know if we're taking the kids, where they're going, where to pick them up, so. What's that?
That you won't get near the school. If there's a situation at the school, you're not going to be able to get near it. So it's best if you stay and wait, and as soon as we can tell you anything, as soon as they determine the threat, if there is no threat, we will notify you.
One of the things I'll add, so that's the extreme. If there's an event that's actually occurring in our at a school, you would start getting texts from students, and they would beat us to get a communication out. Let me go the other direction where we have let's say there is a written threat that is found at one of the schools that a student finds in a bathroom written on a wall. And it says that there's a bomb in the building and it's going to go off today at 3 o'clock, and it's 9. First thing that we do, we are not going to send out a notification to our families about that threat. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and call the police over. We're going to start assessing the situation to determine, do we feel this is a credible threat? Once we start digging into the threat, one of the things that you'll notice when you walk around our buildings, there's bubbles, and those are cameras. So those cameras, we use those cameras to say, let's start looking at who walked into this restroom. Let's look at when when it was reported, so on and so forth. So we start really analyzing the situation to determine. And this year we've had, at one event, we brought a dog in to have a dog sweep a building. And that takes some time. If we are having that occur, none of that will occur until you're going to be notified well in advance, because we're going to vacate the building and we're going to start this process. However, I will tell you that there are times where we have a threat that's written in a bathroom wall, and a student walks out, says it in front of the rest of the class, and we start really kind of digging into the investigation. Well, that might be when you start getting a text message that there's something that's occurring. We will get to you, but we don't even know the message to share with you at that point, because we are just trying to assess the situation. We want to make sure the information we give you is accurate and is good information, accurate information, and that we know that we're going to try to tie this thing up and explain at the end what occurred. So you may get multiple messages from us, but we will make sure that we get that information out. That's one of the things that as soon as we start getting into it, we hear, hey, I want to let you know, because a lot of our teachers have kids. I have a student at the high school, and all of a sudden you start getting something on your phone, and they know it before we know it. And so once we start seeing that, we know communication's got to start moving a little quicker for us.
That answer your question, Mr. Rice? Thank you. Who else? Back here, I think, and then I'll get to you, sir. Go ahead.
I have a general question and then one about a school-specific thing too. I know a lot of the problems you guys are having are with elementary schools, and I certainly understand that, having an elementary school student. We are, I don't want to say we, have done some research on, and there's, it's all over about getting safe rooms for your classrooms or getting locks for your classrooms that people can't get in. Wouldn't that be something that's helpful for the elementary schools when you can't really explain and they can't help barricade? Isn't something like that a better option than just saying, well, we'll work on this? It just seems like if this is a viable option for people to do, and we are having that problem at the elementary school, that this could be a true viable solution instead of just trying to figure it out and have them help.
Yeah, to answer the question is yes, we do have devices in some of the classrooms for that reason, and we're slowly implementing that into the school, throughout all the schools, so it is coming, and just cost-wise to being able to get the money together to be able to do so, but yes, we are working on that.
And there are some that are actually already in place in all buildings throughout the district who are certain
I think
rooms.
that's fantastic, I really do, but is that going to go for all of the kids, or just going for specific classrooms? Because if it's going for some kids, shouldn't it go for all of them?
Correct.
It's a matter of cost. How do I buy two for my kids?
I'm sorry?
Do you buy two for your own kids?
I mean, if we live in that room, I'll buy two next year for the rooms they're in. It's just a matter of cost, really.
Budget then?
The classrooms that we have looked at, some of these special locks for are the ones with students that may have, it's not like one first grade classroom gives it over the other first grade classroom. It's some of our classrooms like band rooms and things, they don't have doors that lock. So we were looking at where the highest need was first in terms of students that can't get out and some physically can't get out. And then some of the rooms that don't have the same locking capabilities. And then we plan to move things out as we can. We are working on a plan for that. There's a lot of questions about that right now, so we are definitely looking into how do we expand that.
Well, I mean, can we answer the question, is it a cost issue that's for prohibiting this?
From going,
For all elementary school rooms?
No, I think one of the things that we've looked at is the fact that, we're trying to train our kids as well, prepare them, that there may be times where we don't want them staying in the room, and sometimes staying in the room could be more detrimental than them leaving the room. And so I think one of the things that we've looked at, there are school districts absolutely that have installed the barricade locks in all their rooms. They're pretty much a lockdown school district that when an event occurs, they are locking down. They're going to barricade that door with the barricade lock. Right now, with everything we're doing, that would almost be a mixed message for us, but having it as an option is what Mrs. Fiore is saying. We are definitely looking at it. If we know that $85 lock is what we need, we will absolutely purchase that. That is not a cost that, everything costs when it comes to safety, but there's not anything that is worth the life of any of one student or one of our staff members. So absolutely, yeah, there's costs associated. When we're making decisions that deal with costs when it comes to safety, we want to make sure that what we're doing is going to be the right thing and that we're going to get the most benefit out of that. So I anticipate you'll see more of those. I don't know if they will be throughout the entire district, but that could change. A year from now, we could say every classroom has those as an option to barricade if you are not evacuating. So we believe strongly that if we have a threat in one side of our building, we want to get the rest of the building out. And we don't want to find out that a couple staff members or students barricaded and locked down when they should have gotten out. So it's that fine line again. But no, I will answer in terms of cost, that would not be an issue for us when it comes to something that's an $85 lock.
And then my question for that was school specific. My daughter goes to Trayvon and we love it there, but at 1:45, 1:50, they open the front doors and anybody can walk in to come get their kids.
Right, and we just talked about that, because last week we have come up with a plan, we're rolling it out to parents very soon. We're gonna leave it locked, and any parent who chooses to pick up has to come be buzzed into the office just like the rest of the day. We still come back to the same problem of at 2 o'clock, so we have every kid, 700, how many kids walking out to buses at one time, but that is gonna be the process of pickup. It's gonna be one more layer, not necessarily parent friendly, but that's okay.
And one thing I want to thank our parents. We had an all administrators meeting last week. I think it was last week. 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. And this was the entire topic of conversation because after the event occurred, I received a number of emails that came in from parents just with those exact same concerns. And one of the things I think that happens to us is it's like living in a fishbowl. You forget the water that you're swimming in. So we are in these buildings every minute of every day. I still get frustrated that when I go to schools, some you pull the handle, other ones you got to turn the handle because the door's always locked. And I'm always the guy that can't figure out how to get into the office. But truthfully, when parents see stuff like that, I would encourage you all to email your building principal or email me because those are the things we need to see. We get so used to how we function and run our buildings that there are times where a parent would say, are you aware that back door is always propped? Or are you aware? I had a parent who said to me that the great thing was they asked to go to They wanted to go to the Lost and Found to pick up something during the day, and the staff members would not let them go to the Lost and Found because it was during the day. The downside was they said, come back at this time when we dismiss and you can go, which is exactly what they did. And the parent emailed and said, so I didn't get to go during the day, but now I'm walking through the hallways with hundreds of kids to go to the Lost and Found. So those are the kind of things that we said, now we can't do that. We have to see that as a threat or something that could be something worse than something that we tend not to see. So I appreciate that, and I would encourage all of you, if you see something that just doesn't feel right or doesn't look right, to reach out to your building principal or reach out to us, and we will look to address that.
Did you still have a question? While we get him, I'll come back to you. Is that okay, sir? Because he was, go ahead.
Good evening, how you doing? First of all, thank you for your work. I think it's excellent that we have people courage enough that runs towards danger while everybody tries to be safe. Hats off to you. I tell that to the kids always. I've talked to Mr. Autumn before about picking up students at school, because on Maryland, you have to have an ID in order for you to be able to pick up your kid, and there's only one door, and that goes. So I'm happy to hear that this stuff is being worked on. The question I have is as far as a volunteer. I like to volunteer at school. The principal knows I'm there most of the time. Is there any way that this training can be partially offered as a volunteer? No, as a volunteer. Partially offer for them to know what is aware of them, because at one point in time, we're not there 24/7. We're not there all the time, but when we are there, yeah, we're going to listen to them, but at least we have to have something to go forward on them.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. We do that with our substitute teachers. We want to make sure that they're prepared. And you have asked me twice about the cards, and I am happy to report that Mr. Schwederman, who is sitting in the back right there, we just had a meeting that we are moving towards a system for our volunteers that will give them an ID badge coming in. So I wanted to let you, I'm glad you said that. But so yes, we are looking at doing that, but it would be a great opportunity. Once we get that core list, which Mr. Schwederman, when we are having, because we would be fingerprinting those volunteers. Once we have those individuals, we could ask them to come attend some type of a training. We're not going to give them the entire booklet, but to have them be aware of the steps of Alice and how to proceed should something like that occur. I think it's a great idea.
Okay, thank you. We'll talk more offline, but thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll jump back over here, sir.
So again, I do want to thank it makes me feel good to live in a community like this. However, to kind of get to the point you're talking about, we do have blind spots, and it's just human nature that we could potentially, with the best plans, become complacent over time. So my question is, in light of the recent incidents, have you thought about having a sister agency, maybe a fellow police department? I know we have a large military installation here with anti-terrorism, force protection people that kind of do a threat assessment, a formal one, to look at your plan, identify where you might have some blind spots, and give you some formal recommendations back to maybe where you can close those gaps.
Thank you for that question. We do partner with other agencies in the area, mainly our partners here in Greene County. We all do assessments for each other. Periodically, these gentlemen will walk the school buildings and make sure that there aren't any vulnerable areas. And again, we look to you as parents and the students to assist us, letting us know by you staying engaged, involved, and letting us know when you hear something from your child or you observe something yourselves, is to let us know, let the schools know. Because the only way we're going to stay on top of this problem is if we're all involved. Complacency is our biggest enemy, and we need to all work together in order to address the issues so that we can come up with the right solutions. You know, part of the issue we're dealing with, and I'll talk about the community in general, but then it ratchets down to the schools because of the individuals we're seeing commit these heinous events. We have a major mental health issue. We deal with it every day out there on the street. These officers do, encountering more and more people with mental health and addiction issues. That's a societal problem that, quite frankly, we as the police can't arrest our way out of. It's going to take all facets of society to working together to address these issues. We're seeing more of it. We're seeing more of these attacks because schools, churches, malls, businesses are soft targets. 15 years ago, I would have never imagined we'd be dealing what we're dealing with regards to the attacks in schools. But again, we have to get out front of the problem, and we're doing that by training and working in collaboration and partnership with not only the schools, but our other law enforcement agencies and other community partners. Again, it's not a simple solution, but I encourage all of you, you're here tonight and you're engaged, stay engaged. Let us know, let the schools know if there's any suggestions or things that you become aware of that will help us combat this problem, because it's not going to go away. We do not want it coming to this community, but we cannot stick our heads in the sand and hope it never happens. We want to be able to address it when it does, if it should ever happen. The difficulty with the elementary school, and I heard a few of those questions, is again, that line between we don't want to create fear in the children, not wanting to come to school. So again, anything we can do to teach them to delay, hinder, or simply evacuate is what we want to try to train them. Because we all know these shooting incidents, they're over in a few minutes. Anything that can be done, especially here at the high school level, if we can delay those individuals, interrupt them, keep them, because their goal is to injure, kill as many individuals as they can. It's about body counts with those individuals. So anything we can do to delay, prevent, hinder, they're going to keep moving. Because if they got to stop at a door and fiddle with it and try to get in it, that's too much time. They're going to move on. They're going to go somewhere else. And that's the goal, to keep them moving so that they're not just randomly firing at individuals who are helpless and in their line of sight, basically. So again, it's the assessment you're talking about, those are ongoing, and we do those. And that's why these two individuals have been trained at the school level. We are presenting and trying to do more as far as community presentations. And I say this to all of you because we're sitting here talking about the schools, but this could happen in your church. This could happen while you're shopping at one of the businesses. It's all about being aware of your surroundings. So we are doing more and trying to do more as far as presentations to the community with the modified version of this ALICE program. The problem is these two gentlemen are in schools 5 days a week. The only time they get a break is on the weekend and during the summer, and their summers have been booked up presenting some of these to our businesses and churches. So we're trying to look at more ways to expand that part of our programs, but again, it's keeping all of you engaged. So I hope that answered your question. I kind of added to it, but.
And one thing I'd like to add too as well, thanks for coming out tonight, but we also ask you guys to engage with your children, talk to them, don't hide from it. Like you said, it's a life skill. We talk to them about, okay, if you're out to see somebody, danger stranger, it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, but we need to have these conversations with our kids. You know your children better than we do, and the more they hear it from you, I think the better off we would be in the long run.
And your thing with the base, not that we have not worked with them. I mean, a lot of the classes that we do, and me and Matt have went through, are either, they're put on through NIMS, the National Incident Management System, which is kind of what we subscribe to on some of this stuff, FEMA, JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Force. So there are other facets and agencies that are doing these similar things, and we're working with them when we do this. But to say that the base has, not looked at our thing, I can't answer that specifically, but we do work with other agencies pretty closely and try to.
You said you got stories and stuff for the elementary kids, books and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have probably enough to hand out, but I mean, we could give you the info on them if you wanted to get them yourself, or I'm not sure if the school, makes copies, or I don't really know.
I know the books that we currently got, you can order them yourself off of, from AliceInstitute.com. They've got a store there that's got different types of books that you can get. There's an activity book, and it's called I'm Not Scared, I'm Prepared. It's a very good, well-written book for younger children, and it basically just puts it more as a sheep, a wolf, dog, and a shepherd. Sheep, wolf, and a shepherd, and kind of explains, they're the sheep, the teacher's the shepherd, the wolf's the bad guy, and gives them ideas what to do, different things in the classroom that they can work with the children as well. But I forget how much they are, the books, $20, $30 or whatever, but like I said, they're a well-written book.
Mr. Ogden said if you want to make arrangements, just reach out to your building administrator where your child's at, maybe make that available to you. You could probably come in and view it or take a look at it if you wanted to.
Sure.
We can put it on the webpage too.
We'll put it on the webpage or post that. Great question.
Yes, Frank.
Just to add to that, you can really easily find it if you just go to Google Alice, and it'll get to the website, and they do have good resources, and they have questions and answers. So their webpage is very thorough. On a different note is just adding to the parents preparing their children. I'm totally on top of that. What a suggestion would be is, I don't know if the safety night could be had before the teachers review the information with the children, because we really were ready to talk to our son. And it, we got to be to the punch. So he came home and he did ask, what Alice is? He said, yes. And then there was this barrage of, feeling very frightened. So we definitely believe in preparing him. It's just what we were going to prepare him on was the end result was a little stronger than what we would have shared with him.
Okay, duly noted. Up front again here. We'll go ahead with you, sir.
So I have a question. I have a child with special needs, and I know that the way the state of Ohio does it is that they try to have the least intrusive teaching for these children. But do you meet with your teachers to see if there's concerns that they have in the classroom, if they have an evacuation of, I have these many children that I'm concerned of because they get affected by lights or sounds or whatnot, and they may shut down and just hunker in place and not want to evacuate with the teacher. When the teacher's got 20, 25 kids, or however many kids in her classroom, and how many kids does she have that's a concern in her classroom that they might have this reaction to it and not evacuate? Or have you looked at the other services that you have in the school that they may not have students at the time, such as speech therapy or OT or whatever, that they may be able to leave their classroom and go to these classrooms of concern and have special needs children to help with that evacuation in the event if it were to occur? Have you kind of looked at those different situations and how kids may respond to?
And I'll let Ms. Fiore give a little bit, from our standpoint from the police, it's very important. I always talk to the staff at our staff meetings, each building, and tell them, you know your kids better than we do. Recognize who's going to be a leader for you, who can do what during these processes and stuff. Getting back to some of the devices that we put in the rooms, limited mobility students and, handicapped students, or potentially that is going to affect them differently. So we, address that. And they have those potential type rooms with that barricade system because we know that's going to be harder for them to get out. So from our end, we have looked at that.
And most of the time, if the student does have difficulty in the general ed class, like for instance, at Parkwood, when we used to have the preschool there, I think about 10 of us went directly to the preschool if there was any type of situation to help the kids get out. So I would say in the elementaries, they know who those students are who may have that sensory overload or that difficulty responding, because if you've ever tried to move preschoolers quickly, that does not happen. So in the preschool, we have a completely different plan because it is very hard to hurry up preschoolers, and that sometimes kids with sensory overload, you can't get them to move. So I would say the buildings and the teachers have a specific plan for those students, But if you do have a student with those types of needs, I would not hesitate to bring it up to the teacher, so you can talk through ways to help, because you know your kid better than anybody.
Go ahead again, here's me.
I really liked those pictures that showed what could be done to barricade a classroom, and I guess I'm pretty lazy and I don't Google stuff and look at your webpage, but if you had videos of people putting that stuff up, or other videos that showed how things might go down in the hallway as far as running drills, so that people, if they're not going to be there for the drills, they can see it, or kids can become more accustomed to some of the threats and the nature of the business by seeing it, rather than, watching cat videos on YouTube. There's something else that they can do. They're maybe more comfortable at home with their parents, looking at some of these videos that show a little more serious stuff going on. If that's possible, maybe the school district could consider.
And we have talked about that, making, on different components, doing a video and showing hands-on demonstration stuff with different things. So we have thought about that, and that's probably something that's in the works, and you might see down the road. Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
This may be the answer to the question may be general knowledge, but since I'm not a CCW carrier, what is Beavercreek school policy, or maybe it's a state policy about parents, which we all know at 2 o'clock you can't get into or around the school because of the line of cars picking their kids up that aren't taking buses. But do we have a policy that says if you're a CCW carrier, you can be in your car, but you can't get out of your car? Or is there any policy whatsoever so that, if something happened like at that church down in Texas where the guy happened to be in his truck and he saw the guy leaving and, pursued him in the truck, foot. But what is our policy?
I might defer here on the school, but I know on the law-wise, the new legislation that came out, and don't quote me verbatim on everything, but you can bring it onto the grounds, but it has to be locked in your trunk. So if you were wearing that, you should probably secure that in the car when you come around, and especially if you're coming in the building. I don't know how to answer. I guess if you're sitting in the car just waiting, unless somebody sees you with it, we don't know if you'd be wearing it or not.
Yeah, well, I thought there were some school districts that were allowing the parents to pick up kids, but they could not get out of their car if they were CCW.
We have a board policy that references concealed carry, but it doesn't discuss getting out of your car specifically, but it says that you can, if you have a CCW, you can have, if you have the right permit, you can have something in your car on school property, or it discusses military, the different ways that you would be allowed to have a weapon on school grounds. And we can also post that link on our website as well, just so you know where it is.
That answered that. How about we'll go to the very back, and then I'll get to you, sir. Go ahead in the back.
This is going to be, I'm sure, a controversial topic. Has there been any discussion as far as arming highly trained teachers? Because if an intruder manages to get into a classroom and you start throwing things at him, isn't that just going to make him mad? And wouldn't, say, you being an SRO or on the other side of the building, and these situations typically end in 2 to 3 minutes, wouldn't a highly trained teacher with a concealed firearm be able to stop the threat extremely quickly?
And that's probably for a whole other meeting, I'm just going to say. That's probably going to be a long discussion here. You cover a lot, I get that.
My 12-year-old daughter knows the best way to stop a bad guy with a gun is with a good guy with a gun. And books and things of that nature aren't going to stop somebody intent on a high body.
And we talk about a lot, there's a lot more in our training about, disruptions, distractions. The goal is to neutralize the threat potentially. They're not just throwing books. At that point, hopefully, they're swarming, and we do teach them other techniques at this higher level and stuff, how to properly take people down and secure them with a weapon if it gets that. I get what you're saying, but that's probably a whole nother long discussion to be had.
And I'll just touch a little bit on that. I think that is one of the biggest debates that is happening right now. is about arming teachers. And I think a couple of key things that you said are highly trained teachers, and there's also a large debate about the role of what a teacher, in an event like this, what role do they have when they have 22 students in their room? Are they responsible for the 22 students in their room? Are they responsible to go out and try to look for some type of threat? So it's an incredible question, and it's something that, yes, you had asked if that conversation has taken place. That is a major topic that all superintendents are discussing. OEA, teacher unions are discussing at length. So I'm unsure where that's going to go, but I guarantee you that will be a topic that continues to have a great deal of discussion about it as we move forward.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, it was mentioned earlier that these kinds of threats go after the soft targets. And I was wondering how much thought the district has given to making the target harder. For instance, I've worked in places where you had to scan your ID badge on the way in and on the way out to go through a turnstile in order to make sure only authorized people are gaining access. That kind of technology exists. I'm sure there's a cost to it, but have you looked at those types of options?
Yeah, we have, like one of the things that we had discussion about volunteers. So trying to, not only do we have to make our situation safer for just the people who come in, but we've started that in conversation with our volunteers. We have parents who volunteer all the time coming into our schools. So Mr. Schwederman, one of the things that he has dug into is how we're going to get people fingerprinted. We're going to, not only are they going to get fingerprinted, but they're going to get an ID badge so that they can come in and we know the purpose of why they're there. But with all that being said, some of that technology, Mr. Thompson, who's in the middle here, he is constantly working with our building administrators. I was out at Trayvine last week and had a conversation with the two ladies up front about, it's a beautiful building, it's state of the art, but they don't know who they're letting in at times because there's a nice big thick brick wall. And so we have had a lot of conversations on how do we remedy some of these situations. And although that costs money, it's worth the money to make sure that we are providing additional safety for our kids. So we are exploring those options all the time and trying to figure out how do we make our vestibules better, how do we allow the people who work in our front office have the ability to look at a screen to see who's standing outside and ask them questions before we buzz them into the building. And a lot of times, those individuals that are buzzing in, they're not the ones that are going to come in and have a problem. It's somebody who's either already been in the school, a student, or it's going to be somebody who's going to the back door and going to damage the back door to get in. So we are trying to look at all those options. But yes, we're kind of like that open book right now. Let's see what we can put in our book that can help us. But we also want to make sure what we're putting in makes sense and provides the greatest amount of security for our kids and staff. So yeah, we're definitely exploring it.
Go ahead, the middle ones get down here, and when you go ahead, sir.
So appreciate we're having this discussion at all. But I also add that it's unfortunate that it's after such a tragic event. But unfortunately, we look around the news, say about 1,800 students roughly are in the school district, approximately?
No, we have about 8,000 in the school
8,000?
Yep.
In the school district. Well, we look around, there's only about 100 parents here. There are more parents that go to a football game. So until we're actually engaged as parents and engaged with our kids and involve their kids, this is never, they can do anything they want. It's a TSA type security at the schools. They can't get anything without going to body scan. But we're not going to get the heart of the problem because there's no relationships that we're showing and are fostering our kids with. This is not a gun problem, it's not a hate problem, it's a relationship problem. Everybody's so busy doing this that no one's talking to each other anymore. Go to a dinner, anywhere, go to any event, everybody's staring there down there on their phones, forgetting there's a human right beside. And we're losing the human aspect of everything in this stuff, you know? Besides the fact that you're already training our students, they already have plans. So they know what they're going to do if something kicks off anyway, so it's not just about doing more security and more drills and more things like that. It's about countering that relationship or countering the ideology that they're experiencing and replacing that with the fact that there's human relationships being developing here. So I guess all that to say, my question is, what are we doing, aside from deterrence and prevention and response, which is all great things, what are we doing to prevent it on the forefront of the students?
I think I'll start, I think one of the things that Chief Evers said, I would reiterate, we have a serious mental health issue, and you know, I've been in education now for 24 years, and I'm sure we had issues 24 years ago, and I'm sure we had issues when I was a student, but some of the things that we see our students walking in, and I'm talking preschoolers, first graders, second graders, middle school students, the weight that they carry, and then the mental health issues that they are experiencing. I think everybody, all our administrators here could tell you story after story of the number of students that are screaming for help with mental health issues that we're dealing with. And I think that's one of the things that, as a school district, we have so many unfunded mandates that we put money towards so many different types of needs, but that need, and I think across the country people would say it's a mental health issue, that issue hasn't ever spoken as much as what it's doing now, and we need more support. We've contracted this year with TCN, we have counselors for the Greene County ESC, trying to get as many of our kids as much help as they can get. We are doing everything that we can, maybe everything's not the right word, that our resources will provide, but do we need more? Absolutely, we need more. We need our kids to have more time talking and working through some of their mental health issues and getting the support. And I'll kind of turn that to our administrators over here and see if there's anything they want to add, but it would shock you to see some of the struggles that even our youngest kids deal with on a daily basis. And we know they're going to grow up, and we're going to struggle with them every year, and we just have to find the support that they need. So I don't know if any of them have anything they want to add, or Bobby?
I can speak for 1 second. So at the high school, Wednesday, when the rest of the nation is doing a walkout, we're having a program. And it has been designed by our students, but the major emphasis of it is us taking care of each other, of us building relationships with each other. Because we always know that these happen by kids who become marginalized. They don't feel like they belong to the fabric of the school. So if we can put things in place where there are people to help other people so that you don't eat alone, or you don't feel like you don't belong to part of this, that there are a group of kids that will respond to you and try and take you under the wing and make you a part of this, a much better chance of those not happening. And if they do, then we have a much better chance of somebody recognizing that and getting to us if they feel comfortable with us. If we built the proper relationships with our kids, which is our #1 priority, that they'll come to us and let us know, because that's the way you're going to stop it. We're not going to stop them when they're walking in the door, because that AR-15 is going to go through anything. But if we can get to it before it happens, that's our best chance. And our kids are our best shot. And if they feel like they belong, if they feel like they have a voice, and that's what our program Wednesday is about, our kids having a voice and our kids taking care of each other and thanking this community for giving us the resources and our kids the support, that's, we believe, our best defense.
In addition to that, we have a lot of programs right now. If you read a lot of the research on how to prevent violence in schools, it talks a lot about positive behavior intervention supports and character education programs, like bullying prevention programs, the different things that are what you said, they're prevention. They're not how do you stop the event once it starts and what do you do when it happens. It's how do you prevent it from the child from ever feeling the need to come into the school and doing that. So it is more mental health, it's more social workers, it's more relationships, it's more, I mean, there's the peer listeners of high school, they do a great job of supporting each other. There's a network group that looks at substance abuse. There are things like that, but is it enough? Do we need to do more? Absolutely. I mean, there's always the need to be better. So something that I think is important that everybody knows what Mr. Harris said, we have to know that there are these kids talking about these things. We have to get kids to talk to us, because a lot of the things that we don't know, we can't address. And so getting kids to talk to us about what they see on social media and be comfortable to do that and feel like they can talk to an adult or a peer or a family member is what's going to give us the biggest impact. So that's something, and we did do a couple safety nights last year, and we had very few parents attend, but we are looking for ways, how do we get more parents involved? How do we get the message out there? How do we become partners with parents so that they can help us figure out how to prevent things like this? So if you have any ideas, we welcome them.
Hey, Bobby, can I just follow up? When she said programs, to me it sounds like, oh, what happens in the elementary school, it's not just programs, it is class meetings as families in the classroom with the teacher and relationship building. When we talk about character ed, we talk about bullying prevention and EIS, it is meeting with the teachers and having that relationship with them and with each other in the classroom to take care of each other. So it's not just a scripted program, it is a relationship building program. So I hope that helps clarify a little bit.
I have a question that kind of resonates back to what the gentleman from the police department was talking about. We're pretty plugged in with our kids, so they come home and tell us a lot of things that are going on in the school. So it makes me uncomfortable when they'll come home and talk about some of the things the kids are talking about. For instance, the alleged sex crime that took place at the high school, but the parents have gotten no notification from the school, and I understand there's an investigation, so you can't give out specifics. But it's an uncomfortable feeling for a parent when your child comes home and they're hearing all kinds of things in the school telling us this, and we're not getting an email, we're not getting a call, we're not getting anything. It's like it's selective communication. We will know if there's a bomb threat, but we aren't given any information about an alleged sex crime. That makes me uncomfortable.
And I mean, I understand that and get that. Some things with FERPA laws and different things, unfortunately with juveniles, like Mr. Otten said earlier, say with a bomb threat or something, we would assess something. If it was a situation that your son or daughter was in jeopardy here at the school and there was a predator or something on the campus, that would be addressed. But this is a situation, unfortunately, involving a juvenile, and it really can't, it doesn't affect the whole building, and we can't control rumors and what, your child has brought home to her, unfortunately, and we deal with that a lot, and I understand that.
In the school district, at least, there's a big difference to me if this is something that took place during the day when there are a lot of people in the building, if it's something that took place when most people have left and there are sports teams in and out. I mean, they're all in extracurricular activities. We've heard rumors there are adults involved. I mean, I don't know what to believe. The kids are all talking about it. So to think that the kids aren't talking about it, it is not realistic, because they are. And the parents don't know what to believe.
And short of telling you anything to put your mind at ease, I will assure you, it was a past occurred event. There are no staff members involved in it, and it has been resolved with the proper social service agencies and our department. And I assure you, there is no threat of anything, with your kids. So, I mean, that's all I can tell you on that, unless you...
If a crime had been committed or something that we were concerned about, the safety of our kids or something like that, we would have been able to tell you that. But because a report is filed, doesn't necessarily give it credence. That means that we can then go ahead and say anything, because a report is filed. Anybody can report a file anytime and anywhere. And unfortunately, we're not able to speak to everything that has ever been filed, or because somebody said something, or a rumor has been started.
And let me just say on that, how that became public was the news media and their insatiable desire to report anything and everything they can, because as they've told me many times, it's the public's right to know. But if we don't fill in the blanks for them, they'll fill them in. In this situation, they got a hold of our log, which they get every day. It happened to have the high school address on it. It was a slow news day for them. So they decided to start digging when they approached us. It's a ongoing investigation. At the time they contacted us, so we're not going to tell them anything. So they contacted the schools and they got nothing from them, so they decided to come out and do their live shot in front of the high school, which obviously what that did then is alerted all of you that there was something that had happened, which yes, there was an allegation reported, and we investigate a lot of allegations. And I would only say to you, if it was your child and they were accused, you would want us to protect that privacy as much on that individual's part as the other person. So again, we conducted our investigation, and as Officer Brown said, it was resolved appropriately through the investigation part of it. I thought what was ironic is they chose to interview a lady from Centerville about the Beavercreek school system. So if that didn't tell you what a slow news day it was, that certainly did on my part.
In the back again?
I think you said there's stop kids in every classroom in every school, is that the case? And are all the teachers trained in how to use them?
Yes. Yeah, every single classroom and every building has got the go bag. All the staff members have got the training on it as well.
Yeah, so with professional development days and trainings, we try to go in and give them hands-on. Like Fire Chief Vandenball said, that program Stop the Bleed. You know, we have different dummies, mannequins, just like the CPR that they can practice on. You know, we try to bring in realistic, you know, type things and make the training as real as possible for people when we do that. So,
Go ahead, sir.
Is there a reason there isn't more resource officers? I know you're here full-time, you're in the high school, I know you bounce around through many different schools. I have 3 at Trayvine. Mrs. Walk is everywhere at all times in that building, but she's not carrying a sidearm. And if something happens there and you happen to be at another school that day, are there armed? You said there's security guards at some places. Are they armed? Do they have any means of deterring anybody? And yeah, that's it.
yeah, from that standpoint, there are security. They are not armed. They're contracted out independently from a company that we bring in. There are 5 of them here on this campus at the high school, and then middle schools each have one each. What can they deter? You know, they are proactive. They try. I mean, they do sweeps every so often. I, you know, have a log. They report to me on. You know, they check the doors. They make sure that all the, you know, doors are continually locked down. Because here at the school, students, you know, prop doors open for their students or let people in and out if they sneak out for lunch, whatever the case may be. So they try to do that, like Mr. Otten said, with you know, graffiti in the bathrooms. At least by them making rounds and documenting when they've been, we have a better chance of narrowing the time frame down when we can do something. You know, when, you know, their last sweep was and now we found it, so we have a half-hour window as opposed to watching 8 hours of video or something like that. So, I mean, they are doing things like that, and I mean, they're proactive out there interacting with the students too, extra set of eyes and ears. So, I mean, they are helpful in that.
Right, but like Trayvine is way down the road. If there's an event that happens and we all agree that it's over in under 5 minutes or so, it takes at least that, probably for a patrol car, if he happens to not be there, to get there. So it just makes it a little uncomfortable for me, and I'm sure any other parent that has small children out there, because a lot of the Alice is geared toward high school and middle school, and the poor teachers in the elementary schools, they've got 25 to 28 little kids running around, and they are expected to do a lot with children whose maturity level is much less, and they just got to become superheroes in that moment. So, like, if a resource officer could be dedicated to, say, Trayvine or something, that just would seem like the ideal circumstance.
And it gets down to staffing levels, and we do, you know, our DARE officer is in the elementary buildings at different times through the different quarters or semesters. So, you know, he is there. There's a unique dynamic too, although we're the school resource officers, that building sits in the township too, so the sheriff's office, you know, has some jurisdiction too. We still have full, you know, during the school day to deal with it. You know, there is a substation at the fire department there off Dayton Xenia where the sheriff's office is, so that, I mean, they're fairly close, but, you know, that's if they're there, and I get what you're saying, but it's just manning and resources. You know, we would love to put an officer in every school, I think, you know, any of our guys would love to do it, but I just, you know, don't think we
You
can.
said there was someone at Coy, right next to it. I mean, if you're gonna say, let's do one elementary rather than them all. I mean, there's someone there at Coy all the time, right?
No, I'm there I bounce back and forth between both Coy and AD Middle School. Now, my security guard that works with me over there at Coy, he does go through Trayvine quite often, and he's like a little Energizer bunny. I can't get the guy to sit down for like a second to talk to him because he's running around all over the place. He loves the kids. He does a great job. And I think he is a great deterrent for anybody out there as well. But
So that's one security guard for 2 schools?
no, I've got, well, yes, technically, he's mainly there at Coy, but he does do his rounds through Trayvine as well.
And that is something we have addressed. I mean, it's, you know, I can't answer on the budget end, but it's one of those things, you know, we were even looking at, you know, private security, even getting them in all the buildings, but, you know, I don't know where we're at with that. We're still trying to make progress on that. But I appreciate your concern. Go ahead, ma'am. Yep.
Yeah, so if resources are an issue, have you considered, if resources are an issue, have you considered levies that might become valid or those things? I mean, it sounds like you guys are doing everything within your power, within your budget to be proactive, kind of. I guess I'm looking at what can we help you with?
I appreciate that question. We have had conversation about, I mean, we've had requests of, are you going to put metal detectors in schools? Well, you can put a metal detector in, but you need someone who's operating that, and that's a resource and so on and so forth. And so, yes, we've had conversation. I think what we are looking at now, which is kind of the conversation we were having up here, is we really need to get a snapshot of what are those things that we think would make a significant difference. For example, some school districts have purchased a wrap that goes on your window, and the wrap is not going to probably stop a bullet, but it's going to stop somebody penetrating through the window. So that wrap costs a lot of money. Well, that's probably something we need to look at to say, what does that look like? If you've ever been to Trayvine or Coy, the entire building's glass. I mean, so it's a beautiful design, but when you start thinking of security, you start looking at buildings significantly different. So yes, we are looking at what are those pieces that really upgrade those buildings, that really create a harder exterior, that will provide some additional security. I think the thing that he said, that Mark said, is time. Anything that we can do that can delay gives us more time, because you're exactly right. I have three kids in the district as well, and yes, it'd be great to have somebody walking around armed in every building. However, I know our police department doesn't have the staffing, we don't have that staffing to be able to do that. If school districts across the country had that as an option, they would all be doing it, but they're not doing it. Someone said to me the other day, we talked about bulletproof glass, we were talking about metal detectors, and the conversation said, take a minute and think about the teams that are in your league. So the GWAC, we have 20 school districts in the GWAC. How many of them have bulletproof glass? I don't know the answer, but I can tell you probably not many, if any, have bulletproof glass at their entryway. How many of them have metal detectors? None of them have metal detectors. So everybody's fighting the same resource issue, so those resources do play in, but I think the other thing is we want to make sure that when we do just figure out, hey, we need to add this or we need to look at this as definitely an option for our kids and our staff, that it's something that has been well thought out, planned with the professionals, and coming to our community to say, this is what we need, this will help protect our kids even more. I don't think anything's foolproof. One of the comments that I said is I haven't seen the news story yet where the bulletproof glass or the lock on the door prevented an event from occurring. I haven't seen that story yet, but preparation and doing those things, putting those in place, obviously significantly helps the situation. So we may have conversations with our community, but we also know there's some of these things that we know we can do now to make it better, and we'll be doing that.
Piggyback on the back of that, I think that there's a lot of parents that are wanting to do something and wanting to help and feeling incredibly helpless that we're being told we can't, we're trying, we're figuring, or whatever. And it just is hard to sit here and know that we can't do anything to help when we feel like we really could be a resource that's being used to help. And obviously I'm speaking for everyone in here, or even everyone in the district, but there are people that want to help, and we don't know where to direct our energy to help, but we really want to do something now. We don't want to wait for something else to happen.
Sure. No, and I appreciate that. We just had a meeting last week with our PTO presidents. We meet with them, I would say, quarterly, and obviously this was the #1 conversation. And there's been a lot of conversation with different schools that say, hey, we want to do this for our school, where we have other schools in Beavercreek that they do not have the resources that some other schools do. So we want to make sure whatever we do for one, we're going to do for everybody. And we want to make sure that if a parent group has an initiative that they want to implement, that it goes in collaboration with everything that we've done. That just something out, if a parent says, hey, we want to purchase this, or we want to get this on every one of our doors, or we want to get this at the entryway, that's great, but if it doesn't fit into the plan of what we have as a district, it could ultimately be a hindrance to us. So we need people like you. We need parents who want to do that. And I can tell you that the topic of safety, we didn't just start having these conversations because of what happened in Florida. We've been having these conversations, I would say, weekly for as long as I've been here. But and I knew they were doing it well before I ever got here. So so I appreciate that, and I know, like you said, you want to do it now. And every day that goes by, that's another day that we don't have something in place. I totally get that. But, you know, we are looking at that, and we are trying to do it with as much tact and as much planning that makes the right impact for our kids and staff.
Just to piggyback what Paul said, you know, I commend you all for being here. Yeah, you're right. We have a lot more people attend the football game, but it starts with groups like this, and we can build upon this, and this is helpful for all of us to have this dialogue. And we talk about relationships. This is a relationship. We're having a dialogue. Far too often today, I agree with your analogy that everybody's too busy doing this. You know, we see that even in our own homes. But again, I commend you all for that. To your question about the schools and the officers in the schools, I did get a survey today from the state. I haven't had a chance to tell these two guys, but the Ohio School Resource Officer Association sent me a survey asking for details on how many SROs do we have, how they're funded, which is critical. The school pays part of this, we pay part of this. That's the partnership we have. I think that's indicating, at least at the state level, there is some dialogue taking place about how can we fund the schools. Do we look at hiring retired police officers, maybe at a lower rate because they are on a pension, not having to pay the salary and benefits of these guys right here that they're currently getting. Although honestly, they're not getting paid enough for what they do. But obviously, because of contracts, you know, we have to pay the going rate to officers to do these jobs. And that becomes a funding issue. But I do think there's a dialogue taking place at the state level about what can we do to get more officers in the schools. I'd love to have one in every building, but the reality of it is that is an extreme cost to the taxpayer because they're 5 days a week in the school. And they're only not in the school during the 2 months we're out in the summer. And they're busy doing these associated things relative to the ALICE program and some other school-related things, plus trying to get their own family vacation in. So I think I'm encouraged by that, but I will tell you, I've been in this business 40 years, and the state, Paul talked about unfunded mandates. They tend to have these dialogues when these events occur. And if people like you don't stay on your politicians, this too will die off, and they'll move on to the next issue of the day. We've got to keep the politicians engaged, hold their feet to the fire, and make them do something to address this issue. If you want officers in the schools, then let's get the politicians to find a way to fund it. But the state typically wants to pass this down to the local level and say, well, school district, it's your problem. City government, it's your problem. Again, I think if there's a will, there's a way. I'm encouraged that they're asking the questions. I'm not sure that that'll translate into action, but all of you, by becoming engaged, staying engaged, get your neighbors, get your friends, and groups in large numbers it's like the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Well, you need to be the squeaky wheel. And I'll be there to help you, because if they can provide the funding, we'll get them in the schools. Again, we moved to the second one just a few years ago, and that was a big jump for us financially. But again, we felt there was a void. We saw the need. Schools did too, and we pushed it with them helping. And we got it done. Our politicians said, yes, we're going to do this. We're going to do this for our kids.
And to add on that too, we get the luxury of talking to the other SROs. Every summer we have an SRO conference, usually for 3 days, and we get to talk to all the SROs in the state. We're one of the few school districts that have 2 SROs in the building, or the district. Most of the other larger districts only have 1. Fairborn, they have one full-time SRO, and then their DARE officer also does a part-time SRO position. So, I think we are leaps and bounds above some of these other school districts around here from what we're doing with just having the SROs and our school safety plans.
Regarding the elementary schools also, I want to remind you of what I mentioned earlier. The district officers are encouraged, and especially at the elementary schools, to get out and get in those schools, stay in the parking lots when they're doing reports, be visible. So we are doing things. We may not physically have an officer in there, but we are doing things to create that sense of security, first of all, that visibility, and that deterrent to those that may have some idea, I may target that school. Well, if they're seeing us periodically, they're not going to run that risk. They're going to move on to one that is a better soft target. So again, I just wanted to remind you of that. Again, I prefer to have an officer in there full time, but we do recognize that we are trying to do things that step up those visibility and security senses for school staff, students, and you as parents. And by the way, the officers love doing it. They like getting out and having lunch there and mingling with school staff. I think the administrators would agree with that. For us, it's getting the officers out of the car. Again, there's that relationship we talked about. Getting out, letting the officers see them, see the kids, and the kids see them in a non-enforcement capacity. What better way to build that relationship?
I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. I know this is a topic we could go on, but we've been going on for about 2 hours. And one thing I want to say, first of all, I want to thank each of you for coming tonight. This is not going to be our last one, and we did 2 of them last year. We did one earlier this year, so this is our second one. We will publicize this again. I love the idea of having a safety night before we start really getting into the drills to talk to parents about that. I think that's a great idea. One thing I want to leave you with is if you have a question that you didn't ask, or you have a concern that you want to voice, I would ask you to email or call any of us. Our building principals, if it's a building principal-specific question or concern, I'd encourage you to call or contact your building principal because they will have the answer for you. If it's a district piece, I would encourage you to contact me. You are welcome to give me a call or email me. Sometimes people will email and say, hey, if you get a minute, can you call me at work? And I will call you at work and we will talk through it. And the other thing I'd like to ask is if you see something or you have a concern about something, please reach out to us. All our administrators, our goal always is to get back within 24 hours. Sometimes when you have an event that is having a lot of people talk about it, may take a little bit longer, but I promise you we will always get back to you with the ability to answer your questions. So, yep.
It's not so much a question. I've had the pleasure of living in Beavercreek since '66, when I first moved here. I've had 2 sisters that graduated from here, a son and a daughter. I have 5 grandchildren that have been in the school system. I've been a volunteer fireman when I was a volunteer. I was on the COPT program for 8.5 years. If you get involved in your community, you will get something back from it. But you got to start, everybody knows, you got to put into the community, because I've been stepping out of it now for 52 years. So I've been putting it in. But when there's a fire levy, a police levy, or a school levy, vote for the damn thing. And get your neighbors to vote for it. And get anybody else you know to vote for it, because that's the restrictions that the police department's under, and the school, and the fire department. They can't go out and politic for it, but I can as a citizen. And I went around the last police levy and I put vote in every mailbox where I live in Brook Hollow. And it was Emmer Estates, Brook Hollow, Green Hills, etc. Just get out and like this one lady said, if you get out in the community and make yourself known, not by who you are, but by what you stand for and what you want to put back into the community, it will work. The other thing I think that would really be neat now, if we would ever do it again, is get the Board of Education back on their butts. And I don't mean the people, I mean the one that, when I grew up, you did something wrong in school, you went to the principal's office, and you got your butt paddled. When I grew up in Texas, Mississippi. All right, it doesn't hurt to give your kid a spot on the butt once in a while to get their attention, get the damn phones out of me.
I didn't even pay for that, so I appreciate that. Now, but I do want to thank you so much for coming tonight, and I appreciate your comments, I really do. And appreciate your questions, and this is not a conversation that we want to end. It's something we want to continue to have dialogue with our families. If you have a neighbor or you have friends, and you tell them that you attended this, please encourage them to come to our next one. If they have questions, say, I heard the superintendent, he said contact him. I will tell you, contact me. I'm happy to answer your questions. I will tell you, I like the comment about blind spots. A lot of times when I read parents' emails, it removes that blind spot. It's a different lens. I go home, I have a conversation with my wife, and my wife starts arguing about something with the schools. Kind of used to it, I kind of block it out. I'm like, you don't understand. But when my neighbor does it, it's a little different. So I always have to go and apologize to my wife for trying to keep her down and say, she's always on my back. But no, I really want to just ask you, keep us informed. Tell us what you see. Tell us what you want to know, and we'll deliver on that. So we appreciate your time. I want to thank these guys for all coming out and spending a lot of time. All right, well, have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.